What if, in a single announcement, your life's work was suddenly taxed out of existence? Imagine orders freezing, factories idling, entire industries gasping for survival, forced to seek lifelines elsewhere. That's exactly what happened when Trump's sweeping tariffs reshaped global trade. In this video, we're diving into 7 countries that are ditching the US for Canada after those economic shockwaves. As businesses scramble to reroute billions in exports, unexpected partnerships emerge. Supply chains fracture under the weight of new taxes, rewriting the very rules of international commerce. Number 7. Germany. Picture a bustling automotive factory in Munich. Stamping machines roar, engineers inspect transmission modules and truckloads of components. Once headed for Detroit are now bound for Canada. In January 2025, a 25% tariff on German-made vehicles and parts left suppliers in shock. Submerged GmbH watched its U.S. orders vanish overnight, threatening 2,500 jobs. But Germany didn't fold. Instead, it acted. On February 14th, a supplemental protocol with Canada created tariff-free quotas for up to $10 billion in auto parts annually. Over the following weeks, Germany redirected 70% of its output to Ontario. Munich's teams reprogrammed logistics to ship engine blocks to Toronto, preserving every single job at Submerged. In Ontario, GM's Oshawa facility rehired 350 workers, and Hamilton's logistics hub added 200 more to manage the surge. And the pivot didn't stop with autos. In March, German wind turbine firm Intercon inked a $1.1 billion deal with Canada's hydroelectric sector. By mid-May, Quebec's yards buzzed with activity. What started as tariff shock became a lifeline for thousands, proof that adaptability can turn crisis into opportunity. Number 6. Denmark. Now travel to coastal Esbjerg. In March 2025, 30% tariffs hit Danish renewable energy exports, and U.S. contracts evaporated. Rather than let the turbines stop spinning, Denmark chose collaboration over confrontation. By April 1st, a $1.5 billion green technology agreement rerouted wind turbines and solar panels to Nova Scotia and Saskatchewan. Within weeks, blades rolled out of Vestas' Aalborg plant toward Canadian ports. Engineers flew to Halifax and Regina to oversee assembly, while Canadian workers received hands-on training. Aalborg technicians adjusted CNC machinery for Canadian specs, while solar arrays built in Denmark powered up Toronto's solar farms. Exports jumped from $500 million to $1.2 billion, a 65% increase. 900 Danish jobs saved. 1,100 new Canadian positions created. One tariff, thousands of lives impacted, for the better. Number 5. South Korea. Imagine standing in South Korea's massive gigafactory in Olin. Technicians inspect lithium-ion cells, ready for electric vehicles in California. Then, on February 5th, 2025, a 20% U.S. tariff cut off that flow. Instead of laying off workers, LG Chem and Samsung SDI turned north. By March 20th, a $1.7 billion contract was signed with Northvolt Canada. Crates once headed for Los Angeles now read Windsor and London, Ontario. Olin's lines retooled, maintaining 95% production capacity. In Windsor, 700 new jobs were created in 2 plants. Ontario's battery hubs expanded capacity by 40%. Meanwhile, 3,000 South Korean jobs were preserved. Engineers who once dreamed of California now board planes for Toronto. A reminder, when one door closes, innovation opens another. Number 4. France. Step into a workshop in Lyon. Technicians assemble green hydrogen electrolyzers, the future of zero-emission transit. In late February 2025, a 30% U.S. tariff put that future in jeopardy. But France didn't back down. By April 3rd, a $1.2 billion joint venture with Canada was born. Within days, $800 million worth of electrolyzers shipped to Quebec and Ontario. Simultaneously, a $400 million wind farm project began off Nova Scotia's coast. 250 French engineers arrived in Montreal and Toronto. 180 Canadians trained in advanced assembly at University of Montreal. By mid-May, 1,000 French jobs were saved and 850 Canadian roles created. Yet not all were spared. Some French plants went quiet. Still, this moment showed the cost and opportunity of global adjustment. France chose reinvention, not retreat. Number 3. Australia. In Pilbara, Australia, iron ore exports power the economy. But on March 12th, a 30% U.S. tariff threatened to grind operations to a halt. Instead of collapse, exporters launched the Northern Stars Initiative, a $3.5 billion deal with Canada. By April 20th, shipments rerouted to Vancouver and Quebec. In Canada, 400 dock workers were hired. Back in Karratha, 2,100 mining jobs were protected. Ontario's steel mills boosted output by 18%, adjusting to Australian ore. Australia's $850 million lithium sector also struck gold, partnering with a Canadian EV bus maker. Battery-grade lithium now heads straight to Welland, Ontario. But not everyone benefited. Small contractors in Pilbara still felt the pinch. This was a shift that showed both the power and pain of realignment. Number 2, Japan. Imagine the precision of a Japanese robotics lab in Osaka, where robotic arms glide seamlessly through test routines. Each movement a testament to efficiency, engineering, and innovation. Until February 2025, a large portion of Japan's industrial robotics and high-precision sensors were shipped directly to Silicon Valley. But that changed drastically. Following a surprise 35% tariff on Japanese tech imports by the U.S., Japan's tech sector was left stunned. Major players like Phonic and Yaskawa Electric saw immediate order cancellations from American firms. Overnight, projections flipped from record growth to steep losses. Some even feared a repeat of the economic stagnation Japan battled in the early 2000s. But Japan didn't retreat, it pivoted. By March 15th, Japan signed a strategic technology exchange pact with Canada worth over $2.3 billion, focused on integrating Japanese robotics into Canada's growing AI manufacturing and medical tech sectors. Tokyo-based robotic systems, originally headed for U.S. factories, were redirected to Canada's innovation hubs in Ottawa, Waterloo, and Vancouver. Within weeks, Canada's tech parks were transformed. Labs in Waterloo integrated AI-assisted surgical robots developed in Kobe, while a Montreal startup fast-tracked a partnership with Hitachi to automate elder care facilities. Japanese engineers flew in by the hundreds, working alongside Canadian software developers to bridge systems and train local teams. Meanwhile, on Japan's side, this shift preserved nearly 5,000 high-skilled jobs in its precision robotics industry. Analysts say Canada gained a decade's worth of tech development in just 6 months, thanks to the realignment forced by U.S. tariffs. In Osaka, factories that were once facing closure are now running 3 shifts a day. Their crates bound not for Los Angeles, but for Toronto. The message was clear: when trade walls go up, true partners build bridges instead. Japan didn't just find a new buyer, it found a collaborator in shaping the future of automation. Number 1. Mexico. Nowhere has the shift been more dramatic or more emotional than in Mexico. For decades, Mexico and the U.S. shared one of the most interwoven supply chains in the world. From car doors to avocados, the economies moved in tandem. But in early March 2025, President Trump's administration imposed a sweeping across-the-board 28% tariff on all Mexican exports, citing economic pressure leverage. Factories in Monterrey, Tijuana, and Guadalajara began furloughing workers. Automotive plants idled, and cargo trucks lined up at border crossings with nowhere to go. But Mexico, rather than fall into crisis, turned to its northern neighbor. Not the U.S., but Canada. By late April, the Maple Aztec Accord was signed, an ambitious $5 billion trade deal that prioritized Mexican agriculture, automotive parts, and electronics for fast-tracked Canadian integration. Mexico's largest auto suppliers, including Nemak and Grupo Bocar, redirected production to Ontario and Quebec, where Canadian automakers scrambled to fill gaps left by suddenly expensive U.S. parts. Agriculture followed. Canadian grocers signed long-term contracts with Mexican growers to replace California produce affected by weather shocks and U.S. labor shortages. Trains and trucks once bound for Texas now rerouted to British Columbia and Alberta. In Tijuana, where a major electronics factory had prepped pink slips for 2,000 workers, the pivot to supplying Canadian firms in Saskatoon and Toronto saved the plant and the jobs. In return, Canada's construction and logistics sectors boomed, creating over 8,500 new positions just to manage the redirected flow of Mexican goods. But more than trade, it was a shift in trust. For the first time, many Mexican exporters described Canada not just as an alternative market, but as a reliable partner. Families who once depended solely on U.S. buyers now found stability in the Canadian system. A father in Puebla who feared layoffs now works overtime to meet new Canadian orders. A daughter in Alberta eats mangoes harvested by her uncle back in Michoacan. The story of Mexico and Canada isn't just about tariffs. It's about resilience, respect, and the forging of a new North American alliance. These 7 countries didn't just respond to tariffs, they transformed. From robotics in Osaka to wind turbines in Denmark and battery plants in South Korea, a new global reality is emerging. The message is undeniable. When trade routes close, innovation, collaboration, and human will find another path. As America raises walls, the world is building bridges, and Canada is becoming the hub.